Folks, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the economic dumpster fire that is Donald Trump's trade war, a chaotic mess that's got businesses, central banks, and everyday consumers like you and me scratching our heads, while the government pats itself on the back for strategic uncertainty. Spoiler alert, uncertainty isn't strategy, it's stupidity. And guess who's paying the price? Yep, you guessed it, us, the little guys, while the suits in Washington play economic roulette with our livelihoods. Let's break this down, boss economic style, from the ground up, and expose the clownery behind this recession-inducing madness. Let's start with Jim Tuchler, a Chicago-area retailer who's basically living every small business owner's worst nightmare. This guy's trying to run an e-commerce site, placing an $80,000 order for stockings from China, but here's the kicker, thanks to Trump's tariff tantrum, he has no idea if that order's actually going to cost him $200,000 by the time it lands. Imagine trying to budget for your business when the government's essentially playing tariff roulette with your supply chain. How do you plan? How do you price your goods? How do you even survive? This isn't just Jim's problem, it's the story of thousands of businesses across America, from mom-and-pop shops to mid-sized manufacturers, all caught in the crosshairs of Trump's so-called strategic uncertainty. And let's be real, folks, the only thing strategic about this is how fast it's driving the economy into the ground. According to the National Retail Federation, U.S. businesses paid a record $136 billion in tariffs in 2024 alone, with small and medium-sized enterprises bearing the brunt of the cost. That's billions of dollars that could have gone into hiring, innovation, or, here's a crazy thought, keeping prices affordable for consumers. Instead, it's being funneled into the government's tariff piggy bank, all in the name of winning a trade war that's looking more like a self-inflicted wound. Now, let's scale this up to the big leagues. If Jim Tuchler can't plan his business, how the heck is Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell supposed to plan the economy? The Fed's job is to forecast economic trajectories, growth, inflation, employment, and set interest rates accordingly. But when the government's trade policy is a giant black box of uncertainty, Powell's basically trying to fly a plane blindfolded, with Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent screaming, "Faster, faster," from the cockpit. Here's the deal, higher tariffs can jack up inflation by increasing the cost of imported goods, think everything from stockings to semiconductors. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that import prices rose by 6.2% in 2024, largely driven by tariff-related cost increases. That's bad news for consumers, who are already getting squeezed by stagnant wages and rising prices. But wait, it gets worse. Other countries, like China and the EU, aren't just sitting there taking it, they're retaliating with their own tariffs, which hammer U.S. exports. The U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that American farmers lost $27 billion in export revenue between 2018 and 2024 due to retaliatory tariffs, with soybean exports to China alone dropping by 74%. So, on one hand, you've got inflation spiking, which screams, raise interest rates. But on the other hand, you've got output, hiring, and investment tanking, which screams, cut interest rates. What's Powell supposed to do? Flip a coin. This is the economic equivalent of trying to pat your head and rub your belly while riding a unicycle and juggling flaming torches. And it's all because the government's decided that strategic uncertainty is a brilliant idea. Newsflash, folks, uncertainty isn't a strategy, it's a recipe for disaster. Let's cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. Trump's trade war isn't just bad policy, it's economic sabotage. The administration's approach flies in the face of decades of global trade progress, which, for all its flaws, was built on the idea of certainty, not chaos. Post-World War II, the world came together to create the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, which later evolved into the World Trade Organization, WTO. The whole point was to harmonize tariffs, set clear rules, and let countries capitalize on their comparative advantages. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. Global trade as a share of GDP rose from 24% in 1960 to 56% in 2023, according to the World Bank, lifting billions out of poverty and fueling economic growth. Trump's approach? Toss all that out the window and replace it with a deal-making circus. Former WTO Deputy Director Alan William Wolf hit the nail on the head when he said, the whole idea behind trade negotiations is certainty, not uncertainty. But Trump's team, led by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, is out here bragging about strategic uncertainty like it's some genius chess move. Here's the reality, folks, keeping counterparties in the dark might work in a shady real estate deal, but in global trade, it's a disaster. Businesses can't invest, consumers can't plan, and central banks can't forecast. The result? A self-inflicted economic wound that's pushing us toward recession. And don't just take my word for it, look at the data. The Conference Board's leading economic index, a key predictor of recessions, has been flashing red for months, declining by 4.8% in the year ending April 2025. Business investment, a critical driver of growth, contracted by 2.1% in Q1 2025, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, as companies held off on capital expenditures amid tariff uncertainty. And consumer confidence? It's in the toilet, with the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index dropping to 62.3 in April 2025, the lowest since the pandemic. This isn't winning, folks, this is economic malpractice. Now, let's talk about the real villains here, the government. Trump and his cronies are out here acting like they're master negotiators, but all they're doing is fanning the flames of recession. Take this strategic uncertainty nonsense. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer was on Fox News last week, teasing deals that are close in saying we're talking weeks, not months. Oh, great, more vague promises. Meanwhile, Trump's signaling that many tariffs, like the 10% baseline tariff he slapped on a month ago, are here to stay, along with duties on metals, cars, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and lumber. So, even if we get a deal, the uncertainty isn't going anywhere. As Morgan Stanley's chief global economist Seth Carpenter put it, one or two deals is not going to remove the relevant uncertainty. Deals need to be durable, and left in place for a long, long time. But here's the kicker, what's the endgame? Trump's administration has made a lot of noise about reshoring production to the U.S., but that's a process that takes years, not months. According to a 2024 McKinsey report, only 17% of companies that considered reshoring in the past 5 years have actually done so, citing high costs, labor shortages, and supply chain complexities. Meanwhile, the tariffs are doing immediate damage, raising costs, killing jobs, and eroding consumer purchasing power. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York estimates that Trump's tariffs have already cost the average American household $1,200 per year in higher prices. That's not winning, that's a tax on the middle class, plain and simple. And let's not forget the Fed, which is caught in the crossfire of this government-induced chaos. Trump and Bessent have been leaning on Powell to cut interest rates, with market expectations for a June 2025 cut creeping higher. But J.P. Morgan's Michael Hansen, a senior economist, says the smart money is on a September 2025 cut, when tariff-driven inflation might start to cool and the labor market weakens further. Notice the key phrase there, labor market weakens further. That's code for more layoffs, more pain, more recession signals. The Fed's in an impossible position, and it's all because the government's trade policy is a train wreck. Zoom out, folks, and you'll see that this isn't just America's problem, it's a global crisis. Trump's trade war is undermining the very foundations of the global trade system. The WTO, for all its flaws, was built on the idea that 160-plus member countries shouldn't be setting individual tariff rates willy-nilly. But Trump's deal-making culture is dragging us back to the pre-World War II era of protectionism, when tit-for-tat tariffs fueled the Great Depression. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, global trade volumes fell by 1.2% in 2024, the first decline since the 2008 financial crisis, largely due to U.S.-China trade tensions. And with Trump doubling down on tariffs in 2025, the World Bank projects a further 0.8% contraction this year. That's not winning, that's economic vandalism on a global scale. So, what's the takeaway, folks? Trump's trade war, fueled by strategic uncertainty, is a masterclass in government incompetence. It's killing businesses, squeezing consumers, and pushing the economy toward recession, all while undermining decades of global trade progress. The data doesn't lie, tariffs are costing jobs, raising prices, and eroding confidence. The government's vague promises of deals and reshoring are nothing but hot air, while the real damage is happening right now. And the Fed? It's stuck playing economic whack-a-mole, thanks to the chaos coming out of Washington. Here at Boss Economics World, we call it like we see it, this isn't strategy, it's stupidity. And until the government gets its act together, it's the little guys, retailers like Jim Tuchler, farmers, factory workers, and everyday consumers, who are paying the price. So, tell me, folks, is this what winning looks like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like a recession waiting to happen. Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button if you're fed up with this economic clownery, and subscribe for more no-nonsense takes on the mess in Washington. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and keep fighting the good fight against bad economics.